Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. I'm Eoin Devereux, news and sports reporter with the Banner Press, welcoming you once again to the show. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it right here with us. And we got a new person here. We're going to introduce somebody you may not be familiar with here on the Story Behind the Stories. Why don't you introduce yourself, young sir?
Young sir. I haven't been called young for a long time. Ken Waddell, publisher, Neepawa Banner Press. It's good to be back to fill in for staff who are away on holidays this week, and I don't mind taking a turn once in a while. Now that my voice has returned, there was a while there where I couldn't even talk, but now I can talk again. And some people aren't happy about that.
Oh, come on, Ken, be honest. You've been watching the last few episodes of the show with just me on it, and you said, nope, can't have that no more. Oh, no. We gotta wrangle this guy in again.
Anyway, good to be here. It's good to be here.
And it's good that you're here on a week like this because you can provide some very interesting insight, very specifically and right off the bat with our very front page story. Very much. This is a story that has legitimately been decades in the making for the town of Neepawa and for the region. It is the official opening, the grand opening of the new RCMP detachment building in the town of Neepawa. And Ken, as we've been talking about throughout this entire process, this has been so long in the making, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. I know that I can personally attest to the fact that it was being discussed between 98 and 2002 in my first term as mayor. And it seemed like a long-term dream that might never come true, but it had to come based on the conditions back in 2000, but even more so now because of the growth of the town and the need for more policing because of higher population. So it just had to come, but it was indeed a long time coming. But I'm pretty pleased. It's a pretty great facility that we've got there. So
it is an utterly impressive facility visually, just the scope of it. Now, if you want to see that, obviously, if you don't live in Neepawa, if you're in town, you can drive right by. But if you're not in town, definitely you're going to have to see if you can get a copy from any of the communities outside of Neepawa where we have physical representations of the Banner Press. Pick up your copy. If you're unable to do that, you can find a PDF version of it or a link to issues on our website, mywestman.ca. And I do hope that you do take a few minutes and check that out because it is an impressive building. It is so impressive. They had the grand opening, the ribbon cutting. It occurred on Friday, November 4th. A lot of local dignitaries, representation from the RCMP, from the entire detachment, regionally, as well as representation from Central Plains came out here to help celebrate the day. The cost of the building was around just over $4.5 million. They originally estimated it in and around $5 million. It came in slightly under budget, which is a great thing. So essentially, the town's very happy with it. The detachment, the representation, and law enforcement extremely happy with it because it's double the size of what they had initially. And we had a chance as well. Myself, as well as members of the community, had a chance to do a tour inside the building. The little things you don't see, or you hopefully never have to see, like the jail cells, for example. But unfortunately, it's a case of there's very specific mandates and requirements for something like this. We would have loved to have taken a few pictures of some of it, but it is privacy, things like that. So it was mandated you could not take any pictures inside the building. So that's the unfortunate thing, but we understand the reasoning behind it. But it is. And Ken, you had a chance to sort of see the inside as well. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, I was very impressed with the fact that it's fairly spacious. The staff have certainly got good working areas. There's private offices for the corporals, each have their own office, and of course the staff sergeant. And but the clerical staff and the officers all have a good place to work. It's a much more secure place. If they bring a prisoner in who might be a little unruly about the whole deal, they drive right into a secure garage, can escort them to the jail cell. The jail cells are they're just a room with a combination sink, stainless steel sink with a toilet on the front end, combination unit, and the only other thing in the room is a pad on the floor, a foam pad. There's no place they could harm themselves or whatever with it, which is a factor. I mean, they had to. That was one of the reasons that the old, other than the size, that the old barracks had to be replaced. It was the old steel bars, and there was potential for harm there. So it was great. I think that they done a great job. And on the front page of the paper, you'll see a picture of several of the police officers in their red serge. And third from the left is Sergeant Mark Morehouse, who has served this area and the region for many, many years. And he had a lot to do with making this happen and helping with the design. And I know from talking to him that he insisted on certain things had to be there. So it's all due credit to Mark for helping make this a facility that we can be proud of and serve the needs of the community. Mark is now retired, but he had a big role to play in the design of the building, and I think anybody sees Mark in the next few weeks, or I must thank him for it, because he went above and beyond.
That's right. It is state of the art, and it is truly needed for the town of Neepawa. We have been growing at such a rate, population-wise, industry-wise, over the last decade, that it was such a necessary. Again, it's something that's been talked about for almost 25 years.
Yeah.
But it's something that has really been necessary for the last decade, in the very least. Just the space, the cramped space that they were in initially, just wasn't working for them anymore. So for the RCMP to be able to have a building of this caliber that is top tier and competitive with any facility throughout rural Canada is great for our town. It's going to make so much of a significant change for our detachment.
Another story we'll be following, which isn't as big a story, but it is a story too, though. One is that the old police station is currently being studied right now, and they're looking at doing some interesting things with that. The jail cells will have to come out, and there'll be some things that will have to be brought out of there. But it is owned by the town. It was in '87 it was built under the jurisdiction of former Mayor Roy McGilvery, the late Roy McGilvery. And he was quite proud of that station, and it was a very good station for its time and era, but the community had outgrown it. The other little story that some people, a little bit of complaining once in a while, is, why did they build the fire hall and the police station where it is? Well, maybe not so much the police station, but the police station's there because it's next door to the fire hall, which is a good synergy. But the fire hall was put where it was because in order to get it built as quickly as possible, they needed water and sewer, and that's as far as the water and sewer went at that time.
Yep.
Now there's water and sewage through that whole former CN property, but at the time, without incurring expense and before the plan was laid out, they went ahead and put the fire hall there, and it's in a good spot.
Yeah.
It's close to all the schools. It's close to the downtown residential area, and it's close to the highway. For even though we know most of the calls are highway type calls or out of town calls nowadays, but you used to want to have the fire hall right in the middle of town because of all the chimney fires.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it is anymore.
And again, it's one of those things. Hindsight is 20/20. The fact is, we needed a facility for the fire hall in an expedient manner. The only thing I would have said, and I've said this before, I've been honest about this, is the only thing about the fire hall I would have done is I would have had it pointing north, essentially, so that the entrance and exits way were a little more conducive for where the road is. But again, there's reasons people do the things that they do. There's a reason they did it the way they did it. So you can't look back, and you can't sort of rebuild something that's already built and something that was very much needed for the town of Neepawa, much like the RCMP building. Now, if you want to be able to read a little bit more about the process, I had an opportunity to speak with Staff Sergeant Colby Argue about it, the needs of the RCMP. There's comments from our new mayor, Brian Headley, in the story. You can find that and several more pictures of the exterior of the building and some of the pomp and circumstance from the event. You can find that on page 9 of this week's edition of the Banner Press. All right, let's shift gears. We're going to talk about something a little more lighthearted, but just as interesting for the town of Neepawa. It's going to be coming up in February. It's an event that we have hosted in the past. But since we've hosted it, Ken, things have changed, business has gotten bigger, the sport's gotten bigger, and it's become a really big deal. And I'm talking about the Provincial Men's Curling Championship. The Viterra is the one time I'm going to mention it. The Viterra Men's Curling Championship. They're the official sponsor. That's the one time I'm going to do it because they're not cutting us any checks. So from here on in, it's just going to be the Provincial Men's Curling Championship. But we had that about a decade ago when it was called Safeway Curling Championship because they were cutting the check. But now it's Viterra, and it has gotten so big, so massive. This is going to be a big deal for the community, I think.
Yeah, and it's a good moneymaker for the Yellowhead and the curling rink. They jointly have set up a committee on that, and there's several people involved. And it is a really big deal. There's certainly provincial and some national media show up, and it puts Neepawa on the map. And so it's good for the town and the people coming to town. There will be a lot of people coming to town, so it should be good for the restaurants and the hotels and motels, and it should be good for other businesses as well.
What I find interesting about it, and I wasn't able to put this in the story because I couldn't find the verification on it, I'm 90% sure it's going to be occurring again this time, is the TSN, the national sports broadcaster for Canada, will broadcast the finals of these types of events live. I remember a couple years ago, maybe last year, maybe 2 years ago, when it was being held in Rivers, they actually broadcast the final live. Because one of the people I share a house with, huge in the curling. So she was able to watch it from the big TV, as it were. So yeah. I'm sure she'd probably be doing that again if she hasn't already bought tickets for this one. And don't forget, tickets are going to be on sale. They're going to be starting on sale in the start of December. I learned that information from checking in on the page of the Banner Press because they've already done a little bit of advertising, but I also spoke with Scott Newton. He is one of the co-chairs, along with Heather Todoruk, that is organizing this, and he talked about how different it is this time around. 10 years ago, 2012, 2013, it was still a big deal, but the number of people involved, the wheels in motion behind the scenes was a whole lot different. He's estimating, Ken, that they could need up to 300 volunteers in order to make something like this time out work. That's a big number, but I'm optimistic, hopefully, that Neepawa will back it.
Mm-hmm. That it seems like a huge number, but it takes 25 people just to run a Neepawa Titans hockey game. So yep. For over 4 days or whatever this is, it's a really big deal.
And Scott emphasized as well on this is don't look at it as a big endeavor. They want volunteers, but anyone who can support. If you can put in a couple hours, 3-4 hours, every little bit helps. Don't look at it as having to be a full-time job for a week, because that's not the way they wanted you to look at it. They want it to be looked at as something fun, a once-in-a-lifetime sort of thing almost, where you get the opportunity to see the inner workings of something like this. And you can be part of something greater that makes Neepawa, that puts Neepawa on the map. Like I said, this is something that is broadcast. I believe it's going to be broadcast nationally. This is our stamp on the curling world. So let's put our best foot forward. Now, if you'd like to volunteer in any way, shape, or form, the information, you can find it in the story in this week's edition of the paper. You can find that on page 11. I definitely hope that you'll take a few minutes and read up about it and some of the work that's going on behind the scenes right now. We're going to be doing many updates in the weeks ahead leading up to the Provincial Curling Championships about what's going on, what's happening. So we do hope that you will follow along with us either on the pages of the Banner Press or right here on NAC TV. All right, so this next one, Ken, it's a little more, it's not as fun as sort of police stations and curling championships, but it is important. It's the day-to-day dealings of a community. As you probably have read in the paper many a time over the last month and a half, municipal elections recently took place. So for the town of Neepawa, we had our official swearing in of our brand new council. This is important. I mean, this is a process of democracy that is very significant, in my estimation.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of biased, having served on 2 councils over the past 20-some years. But that night will be the swearing in, and then the day after is the swearing at. But anyway, at least some of the time. No, it's interesting. I think it's a strong council. Experienced councillor now in the mayor's chair, and that's not to take anything away from Blake McCutcheon, who had no council experience, but I think did a very good job as mayor for the past 4 years. And a couple of new councillors, and we have 3 ladies on council, which I think is just great. One of them has, well, 2 of them have former council experience, one a few years ago and one from the previous council, and then one new one. And I think it's good. There's no question, I don't think any of them doubt it for a minute. They've probably got a bigger package of work ahead of them than maybe any council in the previous history of Neepawa. The previous council brought a lot of improvements to the town. There's no question, like millions of dollars, without incurring a lot of debt. And but there's a lot more to be done.
I would say as well, the previous council, the one that just recently served its 4-year tenure, and again, historically, I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I feel I can say this with a fair amount of certainty. Their 4-year tenure is one of the most challenging any town council for the community of Neepawa has ever had to deal with. What with the pandemic, what with the expansion of the CM property, what with the major flooding that occurred. I'm not saying historically, because I don't know the history quite as well as you would, Ken, but I think it's probably in the top 2 or top 3.
Oh, I don't think there's any question of that. They face bigger challenges, certainly than I did in my 2 terms. There was challenges we had, but they were a different kind than what they have now. But they came through, I think, very well, and I think this council will as well, because we were just talking before we came on air here, and I think I couldn't find the most accurate figures, but I think you said we were the 11th largest community in Manitoba right now?
Officially in the last census, but it's been a few years since that census now. So we were talking to our producer just before the show. They're saying that we're likely in the top 10 now, unofficially. But yeah, I would definitely believe that we probably are, and if that's the case, yes.
It's something I've been observing for a lot of years, and this is maybe a bit of a segue here, but is that people for years would say to me as a citizen or as mayor or as publisher or whatever, boy, Neepawa is sure growing. Well, until about 10 years ago, that was barely true, because the surrounding area was shrinking and still continues somewhat to shrink. It may have stabilized some now. But in the 1950s, dare I talk about that far back, the population of the surrounding municipalities was far bigger than Neepawa was. But that's certainly not the case now, because the farms have gotten bigger, population has dropped. Some of the surrounding villages are much smaller than they used to be. But Neepawa did kind of hold its own and grow a little bit. But in the last few years, it has really grown, obviously, because a number of circumstances, but mainly the High Life hog plant, of course, and the influx of probably 2,000 Filipino people to Neepawa. But it's happening all over Manitoba. Of those other 10, well, say the top 20 towns in Manitoba, set aside Winnipeg, maybe even set aside Brandon, but all the other towns, they're surrounded by areas that have shrunk. And it's not any real fault of the people in the smaller towns. It's a matter of the centralization of the schools, centralization of the machinery dealers, centralization of the car dealers, centralization of the healthcare. And
rural healthcare, that's the big one.
Rural healthcare. And I know that there's people who are looking at building a complex in a village, and the people said, I don't think you should go there. Unfortunately, they said we think you should build in Neepawa. And their main reason was access, ready, quick access to healthcare. And there's lots of complaints about not enough doctors and this sort of thing, and that's being worked on. But we have to understand that Neepawa is very, very fortunate. The towns that have doctors and a hospital, and we're getting the new one, you talked about that on the show a few weeks ago, we're very fortunate in that there's good services here and there's bigger services coming.
That's right. Now, and that's something the council will definitely have as part of their, plate, as it were, over the next 4 years. But they had their swearing in ceremony, and then they got right to work. There's a separate story, you can find that on page 19 of this week's edition, where they did a little bit of work. It's the first meeting, they try and ease them in there. It's like getting into a warm bath type thing. You don't want to scald them too quickly. So they did a little bit of work. They signed an agreement with Manitoba Infrastructure and Transportation, essentially one of our main roads, essentially here, Main Street, our main road, is part of the highway. So they have to look after the snow clearing. So we signed an agreement with them. It's something that's done every year as well. They did a little bit of housekeeping in terms of subdivisions near the future location for the hospital. A little bit here and there. So if you take a minute, just a really quick, breezy, easy read, but educate yourself. I say that almost every week. It's very important to sort of educate yourself on what's going on in municipal politics, because it's the politics that most directly impacts your each and every day. So hopefully you will do that and learn a little bit more about your local leadership. Okay, so speaking of politics and speaking of leadership, we're going to go up a level to municipal politics, and it's getting closer. We just finished up the municipal election, Ken, but now we got to start thinking about the provincial election, because that's less than a year away, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. 2023, there'll be a provincial election, and the Eileen Clark, the MLA for Agassiz constituency, has indicated that she is stepping down. She's going to retire. It's also out there on Facebook that she hasn't been feeling that well lately. So our thoughts and hopes for better health for Eileen go out to her today as well. But there's a new quotation mark face going to try and take that chair, and Jody Byram. Jody is from Neepawa. Pardon me, she's worked hard with Eileen Clark for many years as her assistant, and certainly a familiar face to just about everybody in the Neepawa area. But she was acclaimed. No one else stepped up to run against her. The process is kind of an interesting process. There's a time set for nominations, and someone else could have, or 2 or 3 people. Like the last time when Eileen ran, there was 4 people ran for the position.
That's right.
And it was a big to-do at the Yellowhead Centre when they had the vote. This time there was a much smaller, lower key affair because Jody was acclaimed, and so we wish her well, and we'll see, I guess, which other candidates come forward from the other parties for the election. Was it May next year? I can't remember now. I should have looked it up, but
the provincial is in October, but it'll be interesting to see where the other parties step up, because for those of you that may be unfamiliar with the process, just because Jody has been acclaimed as the PC candidate doesn't mean that she automatically takes over, although let's be honest, in this riding it kind of does. This means that she will be the Progressive Conservative Party candidate in the next election. The NDP and the Liberal Party and any other fringe parties that may wish to put a representative forward can still do so. The NDP, as we sit here right now, has not come forward with any representative at this time. Neither has the Manitoba Liberal Party, but they do have time. I mean, it could be something that occurs in the spring. It could be something that occurs a month and a half before the election. That's just each party's prerogative. The PC party, however, they wanted to do this. They wanted to sort of get things set, get things organized, and move forward with that. So we congratulate Jody on that. So it'll be interesting. We always look forward to sort of the political process and seeing it work. So we hope to see a good and interesting election next year. So
one of the things that does happen in the case of an acclamation is that people may not realize that with when there's a challenge for the position, there's a lot of membership sold that raises a lot of money for the party, and creates a lot of interest and helps identify a lot more volunteers. So it's going to be a little tougher for Jody perhaps to gather together a team, because she didn't have to put together a big team to win the nomination. But so she'll have to be careful of that. But I know that she knows that. So
All right, we're going to get to a couple other things really quick in our last few minutes here with you today on the Story Behind the Stories. I want to give a shout out and a congratulations to the NACI Tigers football team. They recently played in the Murray Black Cup, which is it's essentially the consolation championship with 8 teams in the league. The top 4 go for the Doug Steeves Cup, the big one. Neepawa finished 5th. They actually finished a tie for 4th, but because of the tiebreaker rules, they ended up being 5th. So they were put into the consolation, which is called the Murray Black Cup. Still very important in terms of the Rural Manitoba Football League, and they were able to go through the playoffs, and they won. They won the Murray Black Cup. They, as the 4th seed, they hosted the game last Saturday, and they were able to defeat the Southwest Sabres by the score of 25-6. One of our salespersons, Joel, was there. I was away. Every once in a while, I actually do take some personal time and go and enjoy myself. So last weekend, I was in Winnipeg visiting with friends. So that was that. So I appreciate Joel taking the time and getting some really good pictures. Now, if you want to see some good shots and a really great action shot he got here of one of the running backs, EJ McPackpack, he really did an exceptional job. I think I maybe ought to send him to some of the hockey games because that's better. That's some better than some of the stuff I get there, Ken.
You're talking about going on holidays to enjoy yourself. Well, the reason you don't know it is because you enjoy yourself so much at work.
Oh, yeah. And anyone who's a consistent watcher of the Story Behind the Story knows that's true.
Yeah.
But no, it was great that they were able to win the championship because speaking with Coach Chidi Small throughout the year, this was a young team, Ken, very inexperienced. Like there was a fair amount of kids that didn't really know the game of football. So they were learning as the season progressed, and they did learn, and they succeeded, and they thrived. So congratulations to the team on that. And as well, congratulations to head coach Chidi Small, who was one of 3 individuals nominated for the Rural Manitoba Football League Coach of the Year Award.
Great. That's good.
That is fantastic. I believe it's the first time since he took over that tenure that he has been nominated. So hopefully this time next week we'll be able to talk about him winning. They will be announced on social media soon, but if not, it's still a big, important sort of recognition. So congratulations.
He should win on name recognition alone. Like, I don't know if there's another person in the world named Chidi Small. That's a great name, an unforgettable name.
We're running a little low on time right now, so just very quickly going to mention the Farm and Leisure Lottery for Neepawa District Medical Committee was recently held. Congratulations to Norman Long, who won the 2022 prize of $100,000. We've got that picture with Mary Ellen Clark on page 2 of the newspaper. And we're going to have some follow-up next week. The early bird prize winner is going to get their picture taken. I'm going to have a chance to speak with Mary Ellen about this year's event, how it went over, and the significance of it for the clinic. So you're going to have to stay tuned for that one for next week's edition. So that's about it for this week. So Ken, I appreciate you coming in and sort of helping carry the load this time.
Good to be here. It's I know that the show is a bit of a burden for you and the staff every week, but I think it's good to be out there and review the stories, and I know that people watch the show would appreciate it. So.
Well, again, in the last couple of weeks, it has just been myself, so I appreciate anybody who's still watching the show getting through that so that we can get back to this type of banter. Like I said, we have a couple people on vacation. They will be back shortly, so we're going to be able to sort of have that interaction once again. So once again, if you have any story suggestions or ideas, please contact us at 476-3401. Always appreciate it. Or you can contact us via news@neepawabanner.com, our primary email, or for sports@neepawabanner.com. So again, for Ken Waddell, I am Eoin Devereux. We thank you very much for tuning in each and every week for the story behind the stories. Have a good day.